My father grew up in El Salvador, working in a ranch with his father, but the dense forest wasn't too far off. These are a few short stories he has shared with me about the encounters with the creature he believes to have been the Siguanaba. The first time my dad encountered her was when he was taking the animals to pasture in the surrounding area, near the mountains covered with dense forest. That day he had been running late with his chores, and the sun was about to start setting down for the day. Everything was going as usual until he started looking around at the trees. A wind was starting to pick up in the area. The trees were rustling, and then he saw it from the corner of his eyes, a large leg leaping from a tree to another tree. Seeing that made my father freeze. He had never seen anything like that before. Then he heard her laugh, causing a chilling fear to take over him as she kept leaping from tree to tree, teasing and terrorizing my father, but with each pass, he could see her more clearly. The legs were nearly frog-like, allowing the creature to leap from tree to tree, but she was also skinny to the bone. All my father could do was pray in fear, hoping that thing would leave him alone. But she kept leaping from tree to tree without any sign that she might leave him be. My father then felt a deep fever taking over his body. Although still filled with fear, he somehow managed to muster enough courage to run home, even forgetting about the animals he was watching. When he managed to get home, he entered into a panic and was delirious, trying to hectically describe to my grandfather what had happened to him outside. When my grandfather touched my father, he felt the scorching fever that had overtaken him, and shortly after, my father finally passed out from fear. My grandfather went out there to investigate what my father had seen, and also bring the animals back, but the creature was nowhere to be seen, and the animals were unharmed and didn't seem to have been bothered by the creature, as if she had never been there. Unfortunately for my father, this wouldn't be the only time he would encounter her. A second time he encountered her, it was nearly night when he and a fellow rancher were setting up an enclosure of sorts, near the area where they take the animals to pasture and ensure they won't escape and go missing. Then he heard it again, her chilling laugh coming from the nearby trees, just as the sun had set for the day. This time my father had a flashlight and pointed it directly at the source of the noise, and he saw her hideous face resembling that of a horse, with her long hair and her legs bent like a frog that allowed her to leap from tree to tree. Startled by the light, the Siguanaba yelled at my father to turn it off with a menacing face and continued to laugh as she leapt from tree to tree. This time though, she called out the name of the owner of the ranch, driving chills into my father. My father though was not about to go through this again and grabbed his fellow rancher and dragged them to the horses. Both managed to get on them and started riding back to the ranch as fast as they could, going through thick bush and trees, and by the time they arrived home, they both had deep cuts from the branches. Unlike last time, he kept this experience to himself and tried to sleep this encounter off. That was not the last time he would see her. Another night, my father and grandfather were running late on the chores around the ranch, and my grandpa asked my father to move the horses because they had left them out in the field, in the enclosure they had built before, but my father refused to go out alone at night because of the times he had run into Siguanaba in that area. This time, my grandfather went with him to get this done. Once they got there, she called out the name of the owner yet again, followed by her chilling laugh. My grandfather was a badass and showed no fear and simply instructed my father to do the holy cross on his chest and pray, and by simply doing that, she stopped laughing and leapt away from them. My grandfather and father just kept going about their business without any problems, at least for that experience. The last time my father remembers encountering her was with his cousin. They had been out observing the area and went to the river to hang out and take a dip in the fresh water. While they were in the river, they heard her laughing, but she was nowhere in sight. My father was not having any of it and took off running, while his cousin followed behind and was lagging behind. My father's cousin kept calling out to him to wait for him to catch up because he was terrified, but my father was not having it and kept running until they couldn't hear her anymore. These are experiences my father has had with the Siguanaba, and he has other experiences with other paranormal creatures. I hope to bring those to you in future videos. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it. If you have a story to share, email it to me at the necronomic.files@gmail.com. Check descriptions down below, and keep your eyes peeled. You may never know what's lurking out there.